Few stories in history are as dramatic, as utterly pivotal, as the one we're about to uncover today. This isn't just ancient history, it's a foundational blueprint for how tyranny crumbles, how ordinary people spark revolution, and how an entire civilization can pivot in a single, desperate moment. If you want to understand the true origin of the Roman Republic and why its lessons still echo in our world right now, you need to hear this. We're talking about the shocking fall of Tarquinius the Proud, the last king of Rome, and the violent birth of a system that would conquer the known world. Most people think of Rome's transition from monarchy to republic as a gradual evolution, a slow political shift, but that's not what happened at all. They miss the brutal, personal, and profoundly emotional catalyst that ignited the flames of change. They don't grasp the depth of resentment, the raw human tragedy that finally pushed a city to its breaking point. If you only see the headlines of history, you miss the human element, the personal betrayals, and the unbearable pressure that led to an explosive and irreversible shift. And if you ignore this moment, you lose a critical key to understanding the very DNA of Western political thought. You won't fully comprehend why Rome built the institutions it did, why it so vehemently rejected the idea of kings, or how susceptible even the most powerful structures are to the fury of a unified populace. These aren't just old tales, they're patterns that continue to repeat themselves, even in 2025. Our story begins not with a hero, but with a villain. Lucius Tarquinius Superbus, Tarquinius the Proud. He wasn't elected, he wasn't chosen, he seized the throne through violence and deceit, orchestrating the murder of his own father-in-law, King Servius Tullius. This was a man who believed power was his by right and that he could rule without restraint. He immediately abolished all reforms that had benefited the common people and the Senate. He surrounded himself with a personal guard, executed rivals without trial, and used public funds for lavish personal projects, forcing Roman citizens into grueling labor to build his grand temples and circuses. Every brick laid was a new layer of resentment, hardening the hearts of his people against him. Tarquinius saw the Senate not as a council, but as an annoyance. He rarely consulted them. When he did, it was usually to deliver orders, not seek advice. He systematically stripped away their authority, replacing respected senators with his loyalists. This wasn't just about political power, it was about human dignity. The noble families, the very backbone of Roman society, found themselves powerless, humiliated, and seething with a quiet fury. The common people, too, suffered under his heavy hand. High taxes, forced military service, and endless public works projects ground them down. Rome was powerful under Tarquinius, yes, but it was a power built on fear, not loyalty. And that's a dangerous foundation, as he was about to find out. The monarchy was already teetering, but it was not a grand political speech or a widespread rebellion that finally lit the fuse. No, it was a single, unspeakable act that shattered an empire. An incident so personal and so outrageous that it galvanized an entire city into revolution. The Roman army was away, besieging the town of Ardea. Among the officers were Tarquinius's own son, Sextus Tarquinius, and his cousin, Lucius Tarquinius Collatanus. One night, while boasting about their wives' virtues, they decided to ride back to Rome unannounced to see who was the most chaste and diligent. They found the king's daughter-in-laws feasting and enjoying themselves. But when they arrived at Collatanus's house, they found his wife, Lucretia, working diligently at her loom, even late into the night, surrounded by her maids. Her virtue and beauty were undeniable. But Sextus Tarquinius, consumed by lust and hubris, conceived a dark plan. A few nights later, he returned to Collatanus's house. He was received as a guest, a relative, but in the dead of night, he crept into Lucretia's room, holding a sword to her throat. He demanded she submit to him, threatening to kill her, and then place the body of a slave next to hers, claiming he had found them in adultery. The shame of this false accusation, even in death, would have ruined her family's honor forever. Facing this impossible choice, Lucretia succumbed to Sextus. The next morning, shattered and shamed, Lucretia sent for her father, Spurius Lucretius, and her husband, Collatanus. She also summoned Publius Valerius, a prominent noble, and a man named Lucius Junius Brutus. Brutus was an unusual figure. He had feigned idiocy for years to avoid Tarquinius's suspicions, earning him the nickname Brutus, meaning dullard. But his mind was sharp, his resolve unyielding. When they arrived, Lucretia, in tears, recounted the horrific act committed by Sextus. She made them swear an oath to avenge her. Then, before their horrified eyes, she plunged a dagger into her own heart, declaring that no woman should live to be an example of dishonor. This was the precise moment. This wasn't just a personal tragedy, it was a profound political defiance. It stripped away all pretense of the monarchy's legitimacy. It showed the utter contempt Tarquinius's family had for the Roman people and their fundamental values. Brutus, throwing off his guise of idiocy, seized the bloody dagger. He swore an oath over Lucretia's body, an oath that would change the course of history forever. He swore that no king would ever again rule Rome. He denounced the tyranny of Tarquinius and called for the immediate overthrow of the monarchy. Collatanus, Lucretia's grieving husband, Valerius, and Lucretius joined him. This wasn't just revenge, it was a demand for freedom, a complete rejection of the power structure that had allowed such an atrocity. What happened next would seal Rome's fate, but not without a last desperate struggle. Brutus, using his newfound authority and the raw emotion of the moment, carried Lucretia's body to the Forum. He delivered an impassioned speech, recalling Tarquinius's countless injustices, the murder of Servius Tullius, the forced labor, the executions without trial, and now the rape and suicide of Lucretia. The people, already simmering with discontent, erupted in outrage. The image of the virtuous Lucretia, sacrificed to the lust of a tyrant's son, was too much to bear. The people, led by Brutus, immediately voted to strip Tarquinius of his command and banish him and his family from Rome. Tarquinius, receiving news of the uprising while still at Ardea, raced back to the city, but the gates were shut against him. The army, swayed by Brutus's eloquence and the popular uprising, turned against their king. Tarquinius the Proud, the man who had seized power through force and ruled with an iron fist, found himself an outcast, a king with no throne, an empire without a monarch. From the ashes of tyranny, a new system was born. The Roman people, having violently rejected the very concept of kingship, established the Republic. They elected 2 consuls annually, men who shared power, who could veto each other, and whose terms were limited to a single year. This was a direct answer to the abuses of Tarquinius. They sought to ensure that no single man could ever again wield such unchecked authority. This wasn't just a political change, it was a psychological one. The memory of Tarquinius, and especially the tragedy of Lucretia, became a permanent reminder, an indelible lesson etched into the very foundation of the Roman state. Every consul, every senator for centuries to come understood the constant danger of one-man rule. This moment defined a civilization, laying the groundwork for its expansion and its values. Don't just see this as ancient history. The patterns of power, corruption, and popular uprising are still playing out today in our own time. Understanding Rome's birth pains helps you decipher current events, helping you see the familiar signs before history repeats itself. But the story of Rome's early republic is just beginning. Casting out the kings was a monumental step, but it created a power vacuum and endless new challenges. What struggles did it face immediately after casting out its monarchs? How did it navigate internal divisions and external threats without a king? If you want to understand how Rome went from this fragile new republic to a regional power, navigating decades of political turmoil and military threats, watch my next video after this one. It's titled, The Early Roman Republic, From Chaos to Conquest, and I break down the immediate challenges
and the brilliant strategies that secured its future, ensuring the lessons of Tarquinius were never forgotten.